Hello, this is Patricia from patriciaventi.com, and today I have a tutorial on how to crochet these super easy mittens, and this is a beginner-friendly pattern. The body of the mittens is super easy to make, and the thumbs are a little bit tricky, but I have faith you can do it. And I designed the mittens to match this crochet hat for beginners, and I'll put a link to that below, and also the written pattern for this will be in the description box below. Now, the yarn that I'm using for this is the ball that's left over from this project, the Hugs and Kisses scarf tutorial. And this tutorial needed just a little bit more than one ball of yarn. So this is what's left. And it turns out that it's actually just enough to make the mittens for my size. So I actually recommend that you use a full ball of yarn. This is the Lion Brand Ferris wheel yarn. It's a vintage carousel color, a number 4 medium weight acrylic yarn. You can use any yarn you like. You could even use a chunkier yarn because we're custom fitting the mittens. This ball is 3 ounces or 85 grams, 270 yards or 247 meters. So you're going to need probably about 230 to 250 yards to make the mittens. Then you'll need a 4mm G6 crochet hook. And if you're not proficient with your crochet tension, you can have a slightly larger hook. This is a 5mm or H8. That's for the setup row, just the first row. Then you'll need a darning needle, some scissors, some stitch markers, and a cloth tape measure. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make 2 panels, 2 rectangle shapes, custom size to fit your hand or to fit the hand of the person you're making it for. And so that's why there's not going to be any specific stitch count. It'll be custom based on the size of your hand, your crochet tension, and your choice of yarn. So you'll start by measuring around the widest part of the palm of your hand. So bring that around and bring it down to the widest part of the palm. And for me, I'm at 7 inches or 18 centimeters. So that's how wide you're going to make the panels. The rows will be crocheted in this direction, so you'll crochet until you get to the height that is the diameter around your hand. And the next measurement for the length of the mitten is to measure for the cuff section. You're going to come down 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters, and you'll put that mark right where your wrist bends. So you have 5.5 inches below your wrist, and then you'll measure to the top of your longest finger, your middle finger. And for me, that's 12.5 inches or 32 centimeters. And then you will add a 1/2 inch. So I need to make my panels 7 inches by 13 inches. And one more thing, if you're making this for a child, then you can make this cuff section a little bit shorter. I don't have children, so I don't have anyone to measure it on. You might make this 5 inches or 4.5 inches for the cuff. And also, if you want a big chunky cuff or you want the glove to be longer, you can make that cuff section longer. So it's totally up to you. This is just sort of a basic size guide for an average size hand. So we'll start by creating a foundation chain that is the height of the gloves that you want. So for me, that's 13 inches. And if you're new to crochet, I do have my beginner crochet series that shows you everything that you need to know to make this pattern. So you're going to start with a slip knot, and you'll put that on the hook. Now the body of the mittens will be made with the 4mm G6 crochet hook, but I always suggest that you do your foundation chain with a hook that's 1 size larger so that it doesn't be too tight at the bottom. So doing the foundation chain with the larger hook, put the slip knot on your hook, yarn over, and pull through the loop, and that's 1 chain. Yarn over and pull that through the loop, that's 2 chains. Yarn over and pull through, and that's 3 chains. So you're going to create a foundation chain that is the length that you need, and I know for me that's 50 chains. So I'm going to go ahead and do my 50 chains, and I'll see you at the end. All right, so now I'm going to chain 1, and now we're going to do row 1, and we're going to work back, and in this chain stitch there's the top V stitches and there's the back bump. We're going to work into the top loop only, doing a single crochet all the way back, not your turning chain, you skip that. Going into the next stitch, going under that top loop, put your hook through, yarn over, pull the yarn through. You'll have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and that's a single crochet. And then going into the next stitch, picking up the top loop only, pull your yarn from behind, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops. And that's the single crochet. So you're going to work a single crochet into the top loop of each stitch all the way along to the end of the row, and you will have 50 single crochets, or whatever is the number you started with. And so coming to the end of row 1, I'm doing my last single crochet into that top loop, and at this point, if you're using the larger crochet hook, you'll switch over to the 4mm G6 crochet hook. So at 50 single crochets, I'm going to the smaller hook, chain 1, and turn your work. Now for row 2, it's a repeat of row 1. So you skip your turning chain and into the top loop of the next stitch. You'll go under that top loop and work a single crochet. And then going into the top loop of the next stitch, you'll do a single crochet. And you'll do a row of single crochets all the way along till you get to the end of row 2. Now see how this is twisting a bit, but don't worry about that. That will flatten out later on. So coming to the end of row 2, there's 2 stitches left, and doing a single crochet into the top loop of the second to the last stitch. But in the very last stitch, you're going to go under both loops and do a single crochet under both loops. And I'll explain the reason for this a little later on, because it's a little too early in the pattern to see why this is. So that's the end of row 2. So chain 1 and turn your work. And for row 3, you skip that turning chain, and into the very first stitch, you'll go under both loops of that stitch and do a single crochet. And then you go under both loops of the next stitch with a single crochet, and you're going to single crochet under both loops all the way to the end of the row. So I will see you there. Now coming to the end of row 3, I have 2 stitches left. I'm going to do a single crochet of both loops of that next stitch, but for the very last stitch of this row, I'm going to do a single crochet under the top loop only. It might be a little bit hard to find. There's the 2 stitches there, and pick up that top loop. And I'm just going under 1 loop of this very last stitch with a single crochet. And again, I'll explain this a little later. And note that this is the end of your work where your beginning tail is. That'll be significant. So for row 4, you'll chain 1 and turn your work. And you'll start this row where you skip your turning chain, and into that first stitch you'll go into just the top loop only with the single crochet, and then you'll go under both loops of the next stitch and do a single crochet, and then you'll do a single crochet under both loops of each stitch until you get to the end of this row. So single crochet under both loops of each stitch, and we'll see you there. Now here we are coming to the end of row 4. I have 2 stitches left, and we'll do a single crochet under both loops of each stitch, including the very last stitch. Now you'll have 50 single crochets at the end of this row, and that's the end of the pattern repeat. From here on in, you'll repeat rows 1 through 4 over and over again, but row 1 starts differently now, and I'll show you that right now. So now for row 1, you chain 1 and turn your work, and this is where for row 1 you'll begin this row going under both loops of the first stitch with a single crochet. We couldn't do that on the foundation chain, but from here on in, row 1 will start with a single crochet under both loops of the first stitch, and then you'll do a single crochet under the top loop of each stitch all the way along. So you're going to repeat rows 1 to 4 until you have your desired width, and I'm doing a total of 30 rows. And the reason for ending and beginning each row with the different stitches is because you have this cuff end, and then on this end here, this is going to be the top end of the mitt. And I'll show you on the other panel here what I mean. So what we have, this is the top of the mitt, the top of the panel, and this will be the cuff end of the panel. And this pattern is creating an extra stitch at the cuff end, so the cuff has more strength and secure, and it's more secure, and it's a nice strong stitch on that edge. But this edge here, we're going to be gathering this all at the top, and I'm reducing the fabric at the end of each row here by doing a single crochet into the top loop only, rather into both loops. So both the first and last stitch of each row will have just a single crochet in one loop. So that's why we're doing it that way. So let's carry on then. And I forgot to mention, you do want to put a stitch marker in the beginning of the pattern repeat. So that's the beginning of row 5 and the row 1 repeat. All right, so here I have 2 panels all done. And this is all the yarn that I have left. So this is what I meant by there's just enough yarn left over from that scarf tutorial to make these mitts for a small, medium-sized mittens. So each panel is 7 inches by 13 inches. And so here, when you come to the end of the row, what you want to make sure of is, depending on how wide you're making yours or how high, you want to finish with a row repeat that's at the cuff end. So either a row 2 repeat or a row 4 repeat. So when you come to the end of the row, so again, I'm finishing at row 30. You'll just do a chain 1 to fasten off, and then you're going to cut a tail, and you're going to make the tail 1 length, 2 lengths, and just a little bit, and you'll cut that. So 2 lengths and a little bit. So here you have your beginning tails. This is your top of the mitt, and here is your cuff end, and 30 rows each for me. Now with your tails facing to the right and your last right facing to the bottom left, you're going to put a couple of stitch markers on this side, because this will be the right side of your fabric, and we're actually going to be sewing right sides together like that. So place your hand with your thumb along the right edge here where your tie is. Place your thumb there, and you want to have your longest finger 1/2 inch from the top. Lay your thumb out in a comfortable position and take a stitch marker, and you'll put the first stitch marker right at the base of that your thumb there, and then one on the inside of the thumb. And then you can close those up, and that leaves you with 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches in between those 2 markers. You might have 5 stitches if you have a bigger hand, or 3 if it's smaller. And then you want to count your stitches down from the top and put the stitch markers in the same place on the other panel. So you have 2 stitch markers there and there. And then what you'll do is you're going to bring the right sides together, and we're going to sew this together using a whip stitch. So starting at the cuff end, you're going to thread your needle onto the yarn, and we're going to use the whip stitch and sewing this right sides together. I'll just zoom in here. So you have your yarn here, the tail end facing you, and you'll just go into the very first stitch on the opposite side, going underneath the top loop of that first stitch. And you're going to come back in and do a double stitch at the base of the cuff here. So you have a nice secured stitch at the base of the mitt. And then you're going to pick up the top loop of the stitch facing you, and then the top loop on the other side of the panel. It's the stitch on the opposing side, and you're going to snug that up and pick up the next stitch, and just going under the top loops of each stitch on each side. You're just lining up each stitch and bringing the yarn through and snugging it up. And now we're up at the thumb hole, so going into the top loop of this stitch and the top loop where the stitch marker is. There's 1 stitch, and here again we're going to do a bit of a double stitch. I'm going to bring the yarn into the stitch just below, going in this direction, because I want to darn my yarn in up to the next stitch marker. So we'll leave an open hole there. So that's a little bit of an extra stitch there. And then this is the inside of the mitt. So just darn the yarn in to the base of the second stitch marker. Sort of pull that out a bit. And then you carry on going under that loop and under the next loop there with your whip stitch. And you can take the stitch marker out now. And then here you want to do a double stitch here as well. So you're just having a little bit more of a secure stitch at the bottom and the top of the thumb hole. And then you just carry on until you get to the top of the glove. Now coming to the top of the mitt, we'll just pick up the very last stitch there at the top of the mitt, and again just do a double stitch at the top just for a nice secure join. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a basting stitch to gather the top of the mitt. So working with the same yarn, you'll skip a stitch, and into this second stitch just go into the front of this stitch, skip a stitch, and pick up the top loop of the next stitch. And you'll just repeat that all the way around, creating a gathering stitch in every second stitch. And then here we are back at the other side of the mitt. So now you can use the yarn and pull that yarn gently, and you don't want to tug on it too hard, and just gather the tip of the mitt around, and you can kind of move the gathering over to the other side there and pull it again. And there we go, and that's gathered nicely. And then you can just take your needle and do a few stitches to secure this across the top. And again, you're working on the inside, so you don't have to be precise or perfect here. Just put a few stitches in to secure the top of the mitt. And then you can just do a knot here. And I can never do these knots right, but 1, 2, and snug that up. And then you can just darn in the tail end and snip that off. So then you can turn it right side out, and there's your thumb hole, and you can see how nicely that looks. And there's the top of your mitt done, and the cuff is all ready to go. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to crochet the thumb hole. So I'll see you there. So working on the right side of the mitten, you're going to create a slip knot and put that onto your hook, and having the thumb hole facing towards you. And you have your 4 stitches here in between where you whip stitched the thumb holes. If you had a bigger thumb hole, you might have 5, or a smaller one, you might have 3. It doesn't matter how many stitches you have. You're just going to join on the one side, going under both loops, and join on with a single crochet. So grab your yarn from behind, flip your tail over. You'll have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. And that's joining on with a single crochet. And now we're just going to single crochet going under both loops of each stitch all the way around. And so there's the 3rd one on this side. And then you're also going to pick up where you did your seam. There'll be a stitch on one side and a stitch on the other. And you're going to do a single crochet into those stitches as well. And going under both loops of that stitch that you sewed together, you'll do a single crochet and pick that up on the other side too as well. And that will add 4 extra stitches all the way around. So you have 4 stitches on each side is 8, plus 2 extra on each end, for a total of 12 single crochets all the way around. And of course, if you had 5 stitches in between, you'd have 14 stitches all the way around. So that's the 4 stitches on that side. And now here we are picking up. There's the actual stitch itself. I didn't do that tight enough, but there you go. There's 2 loops of that stitch with a single crochet, and then come around and pick up the 2 loops of the end stitch. These are a little bit tricky to get into because you have a sewing seam in there as well. Oh, come on. And that leaves me with 1 stitch back on the side that I began on. So that's 12 single crochets all the way around, and then you'll join into the top 2 stitches, 2 loops of the single crochet that you joined on with. So going under both loops of that single crochet, and you'll join the round with a single crochet. So we're just going to work in rounds. We're not going to chain up. And you want to mark that with a stitch marker so you know where that first stitch is. So now you're going to crochet all the way around. That's your first single crochet of round 2. So you'll do 12 single crochets all the way around, counting that first one. And here's number 12. So that completes round 2. And for round 3, you'll join into the next round with a single crochet into that first single crochet, and that counts as your first stitch. And then you'll move your stitch marker into that first single crochet of round 3. And then you're going to carry on doing single crochets under both loops all the way around, and you'll do a total of 6 rounds, or you might have to do 7 or 8 depending on how big your thumb is. And so again, if you had 5 stitches across here, you'd have 14 single crochets all the way around. And then if you're doing for longer thumb, you might need 1 or 2 more rows. So repeat round 2 4 more times, and I'll see you there. All right. So here my 6 rounds, and now I'm starting the 7th round and moving the stitch marker up to that first stitch of round 7. So for round 7, I've done my first single crochet, then I'll do another single crochet. Now we're going to start reducing to make the tip of the thumb. So we're going to do a single crochet 2 together stitch. So yarn over and go into the first stitch. Don't complete your single crochet. Go into the next stitch and pull the stitch through, and you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Then you'll single crochet, and here I'm doing 4 single crochets. You could do 3 single crochets, that would be fine. You just want to work over to the other side, and then we'll do another single crochet 2 together. So yarn over, pull through, don't complete the single crochet, go to the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, you'll have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And then single crochet around, and here I just have 2 more single crochets to finish this round. So now for round 8, you'll join as before into the single crochet from the previous row with a single crochet and move your stitch marker. There we go. And then you can do a single crochet. So this is the second single crochet of this round, and then we'll do a single crochet 2 together stitch. So yarn over, don't pull it through, go over to the next stitch, yarn over, pull it through, you'll have 3 on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. And then you'll do a single crochet into the next stitch. Whoops, things are getting tied up here. And a single crochet into the next stitch. And then we'll do a single crochet 2 together stitch. So yarn over, pull the loop through, don't finish it, go over to the next stitch, yarn over, pull that through, you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And then you'll have 2 stitches left for this round, and 2, and that completes round 8. And then we'll just do 1 more round. It'll be really tight here, so joining round 9 with that single crochet, and I'm just going to put that stitch marker back in so I know when I've completed my full round. And this time you're going to do the single crochet 2 together in the very next stitch. So pull the loop up through the first stitch, loop up through the second stitch, and yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And then you do 1 single crochet, and then do another single crochet 2 together stitch. Now if you have the bigger thumb hole, then you can just do 1 more round until you get where the thumb hole is pretty much closed up. So you just have to use your initiative for that. And here I am at the end. I just have 1 more single crochet to do. So now what we're going to do is we'll just pull that all the way through, or well, cut it off. I have a long tail end here, so I would have just snipped off about a 6-inch piece and pulled that through. And so right now we're on the outside, so we're going to turn it inside out to finish it off. So here I've turned it inside out and I'm pulling the yarn through. I had my needle attached, which wasn't such a great idea, but so now you have this little tip here that you can stitch closed with your needle attached. And so you can just do a couple of little stitches at the thumb tip here. And again, we're doing this on the inside of the glove so that you don't see those stitches. And I'm just going to put my thumb in and double check that that's nice and stitched up. We'll do one more just in this opposite direction here. And then you can just tie a knot there and darn in your tail end and this tail end too. And then you'll repeat that with the other mitten. Okay, there we go. So I've darned in all my tail ends, turned them right side out again, folded the cuffs, and they are all done. And this is all the amount of yarn I have left from that ball that I started with. So again, you'd probably want to use a whole bottle of yarn, especially if you're making these bigger. So here they are. And this is such an easy pattern and easy for beginners. And you can wear them either way. And they're just so much fun, super simple to make. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more creative and inspiring videos. We'll see you next time.